Hello friends, this is Cara-Renee with B.Reborn Art and Healing. Welcome to Watercolor 101 episode 2. Today we're going to be hopping around a little bit. There's a lot to cover, and so but some of it I feel like can be kind of intertwined. So what we're going to be talking about today and doing is we're going to actually be talking about this watercolor set. Is very affordable comparatively to some artist grade paints. We're going to be swatching out these colors, and we'll talk about that more because I want to show you how to swatch out colors so that you can see the gradient. So you drop a heavy load of paint here, and then you clean your brush off, and then you wipe, or then you can blend it out so that you see lighter, 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 so you can see the kind of the full range, the gradient range of the colors. So swatching out your colors is really great because it's a nice reference, as you'll see here in a moment, to see what colors you want to use in a particular project. You also get to see things like how a color granulates, which we'll talk about again as we move through the series. So I'm going to set that aside for a moment. And we're going to talk a little bit about, there was some questions about what's better. Is it better to work from tubes, or is it better to work from a palette? Now this would be what I would consider a set palette. So this, I purchased it as it is. Okay, so it's cakes of paint that are already dried in the pan. Now this is Winsor Newton Cotman watercolor, so they are very, very much a student grade. I want to show you the difference between this student grade paint, the Cara-Renee ones that we're going to swatch out, and a professional grade watercolor. There are a lot of differences. However, that being said, as I mentioned before, I got pretty spoiled with watercolor early on, and it's kind of hard to back out of that. But this is a great set to start with, or the Cara-Renee Gonzai paint is a really good starter kit. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. Sorry, I have a cold, so I am having trouble talking, but I need to grab a drink of water. Pardon me. Excuse me. We're going to be talking a little bit about watercolor paper, just kind of an overview, and I might do a little bit of swatch on each of the papers that I chose. Everything from my Arches, which is my all-time favorite, and then going down the line to student grade. I've got a black marker so that I can mark off. We might mark off when we do the swatching for the Cara-Renee paints. So let me show you some of my palettes. So this is my favorite palette here on the bottom. Let me just move these papers. This is a very big palette, and so I don't typically use it in screen. I do take this one when I go on vacation because it has a lot of my favorite colors. So I don't necessarily, I mean, they are in color, they are somewhat in rainbow order, but I don't really worry about that too much. In my most recent palette, which I'll show you here, I actually divided my palette by cool colors and warm colors. And we'll be talking about cool and warm as we go through the series as well, because when you mix you have a cool, let's say you have a cool red and a cool blue, you're going to get a different purple than you would get if you mixed a warm red and a warm blue to get a purple. So that's one of the differentiations, but we will revisit that in a little bit more detail going forward. So yeah, and I added a couple wells here. I just used some hot glue so I could create a little well for a couple of extra colors. I think those are Terry, what's his name? Harrison. He is now deceased, unfortunately. I loved following his tutorials, and I bought his paints. He was from the UK, and then Azo Green from M. Graham. So we're not going to be using this palette today. I just wanted to show you the variety. So while we're on this palette, though, let me talk about the concept of, is it better to work from a pan like this? Okay, a cake color, or is it okay to, so sometimes they come like this, where they're already in the palette, they're already dried, the manufacturer has already done the work for you. Okay, so there's that. Then there is working straight from the tube, where this is a Daniel Smith quinacridone purple. Now, I don't recommend working directly from a tube because you use a lot of paint, you waste a lot of paint. You could squirt this on your palette and then add a little bit of water and use that up, but I feel like you waste a lot more by working directly from the tube. Some creators I know love that. Watercolorists love working directly from the tube. It's not my thing. So we'll get back to talking about those brands in a second. But then the third thing is you buy a palette like this. This was an empty palette. You squeeze your paints in and then you allow them to dry. Depending on the brand, it determines how long it takes them to set and be not goopy. Okay, when we start talking about some of the colors here, we'll talk about the differences in the goopiness. So this right here is a M-Gram watercolor paint. It is an artist grade. It is my favorite watercolor brand. Absolutely love it. It has honey in it, so it always is kind of soft. So if I touch that, it's sticky. This is my sap green, my favorite sap green. If I touch it, it's sticky, and that's because it has honey in it. So that when I take this palette, this is mostly M-Gram in here, with a few variations. When I take this one with me to travel, I have to make sure it's on the back seat and it doesn't get tipped, because in the heat those colors will actually run, and I've had that happen before. So if you're going to use an empty palette and squeeze your tube paints into the empty palette, you do want to make sure that they are completely set and at least 24 hours before you start dipping into them, okay? Because what happens if you don't and you start using them when they're wet, you can get some color mixing inside of your well, and it's harder to get out. So like this color here, see this yellow is kind of yucky. I probably touched into that with some other color. Oh, that's really sticky. That's M-Gram. But because it's completely set, I could come in with a wet brush and brush that off and take off all that color that's not part of yellow. So it's super important to let your paint set in your palette if you do it this way. This is recommended. I have some palettes that I really love that, let me see, is this actually, yeah, this is not an actual Winsor Newton Pro palette. It's one I set myself. And what I mean by set is I purchase the colors, I choose the colors I want to have in the palette, and then I squeeze them in, I let them dry, I swatch them out, and all of those things. So both of these are ones that I've set. So this is Winsor Newton Pro watercolor, and I haven't used it a lot. Oh, I guess I have. Where are my other colors? Some of them popped out. That one goes there. There we go. Get that in there. It's completely dried. But the beautiful thing about watercolor, oh, that doesn't go there. I need to figure out where my other paints went. They escaped. They have escaped. Oh, there's one over there. Oh my goodness. Let me pull that. Oh, I don't know if I can get it out now. I'll have to get a knife or something. See, the brown is sitting on top of the yellow. Not a big deal because it's completely dried. Now, Winsor Newton is not my favorite paint. This is what the color swatch looks like. They're gorgeous paints, but they tend to be a little bit mellower in tone to me, and so they are not my preferred paint. But this is really nice for traveling, and you still have some good mixing area. So, and then in every palette, I do a swatch card like that says the color. So that's my Winsor Newton Pro. This is a portable painter, which I love. I use this a lot when I go out in the canoe. So it comes out like this. And then these little water wells slide on this piece. So let me show you that. Like that. And then the other one slides on the other side. And this actually fits on my knee. I can put it over my leg on my knee, and so it sits like this, and you put your water in here, so you've got your clean water and your dirty water. This is one of my favorite palettes because it's so small. I have a couple of these because I keep one in my car and I keep one in my canoeing stuff, and so this one, it doesn't look like I really specified the brand of paint, but you can see, I mean, watercolor is just so delicious. Look at those swatches. So this is really fun. It does come with a little brush, but I don't tend to use those because they're not usually very good. We'll be talking about brushes in a future video. So I'm just going to go close that up, and I'm just going to set that aside. I'm not going to mess with it. And the, let me move this one as well. We don't need this in view anymore, but this is my swatch card. So it's just taped on with some artist tape underneath so that I can keep track of what swatch goes with what palette, because I do have a lot of palettes. It's actually slightly embarrassing. But this is the most recent palette that I set. And so I filled it up with my favorite colors. And I, again, as I mentioned, I divided it up by cool and warm colors. Now I haven't, this is the palette that we swatched out on the Hippie Crafter paper review video that I did. So I haven't swatched it out on here yet, but you can see where these have a C. Those are cool colors. So you can see I've done all cool all here. These are, they can go either way. They can be cool or warm. And then these are the warm colors down here. And then these, I believe, can go either way. I can't quite remember on those, or if those were just specialty colors that I like to add to my palette. So, and again, cool. And I just made a list on the back of these, which colors are the blue, are the cool colors, and which are the warm colors. And you can actually look that up on the internet. You can say, oh, what is Prussian blue a cool blue or a warm blue, and the internet will tell you. So it's pretty epic, so pretty nice. So and so I have all my cool colors up here and my warm colors down here. So, but this is professional grade watercolor, so that's not necessarily what we're going to focus on, because I want to make this practical for you guys. And so, yeah. So let me talk a little bit about brands here. So, I talked to you about Winsor Newton Cotman. These would be student grade, not great. I'm going to tell you right now, they're not great. They get really... well, let me show you. Let me grab a brush really quick and let me stop talking and show you what I mean. I forgot to grab a brush, so hold on. Okay, so let me get my towel on my lap. I just have this messy, messy towel from my drawer. And I'm going to grab a paper towel. And I like to just keep a paper towel in my hand. And I want to show you what the Winsor Newton Cotman paper paint does. But I'm going to show it to you on... I'm going to show it to you on the Canson XL. So we'll be talking about paper a little bit more as well, but these would be equal. These would like be brothers and sisters in the same family. This is very much a student grade watercolor paper. Nothing wrong with it. But again, I got spoiled. So I got spoiled with the absorbency of a 100% cotton paper, and this does not absorb in the same way. So this is, again, Canson XL 140-pound cold press. Cold press means it's not super smooth. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera. It does have some texture to it, and so that's why it's called cold press. So let's just do a little bit of swatching some of this color out. I've got, this brush is not clean. Well, let's just do blue then. So these ones I didn't name, it looks like, but that's okay. I can tell you right now that this is Prussian blue. So let's just go ahead and get a little bit of Prussian blue on my paper. And I want to show you what this looks like compared to an artist grade, okay? And this is just a simplistic view. We're not focusing on all of that in this series, but I want to give you the information. So this is, okay, that being said, because that looks pretty amazing, okay? That looks actually pretty darn amazing. Okay, let me show you. Pretty darn amazing. So the Canson XL watercolor paper, the paint sits, so I could actually tip this and it would run. Okay, see that run? And that's because, now it's not going to go past the water barrier that we created. So remember in the other video we talked about how watercolor will only go where will only travel where there's water. So if I were to add more water down here, it's going to travel farther, okay? But it's only going to go where there is watercolor. Okay, so that's sitting very much on the surface. So let me grab a little bit of the cold press. I'm just gonna, this is my favorite paper, which is Arch's 140-pound cold press. This is 100% cotton paper. So I'm just gonna tear a bit off of here. And let's do the same thing with the same color, just so you can get a kind of a comparison, a direct comparison. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit right here. Same color. It's actually pretty good, you guys. So, because I'm trying to remember, it's been a long time since I've used the Cotman colors, but that's pretty good. But you can see how the paint is not sitting on top of the surface as much. Come on, focus. It's not sitting on top. Like when I do that, it's running, but it's not. It's just different. There's a wider landscape of paper that paint is already absorbed into the paper because the paper is 100% cotton. So I'm hoping that's making sense. I'm going to go ahead and say, in case we want to use this again, let me grab another pen. That's the wrong kind here. And I don't need to be super choosy. Cara-Renee, you don't need to be choosy. Just use a pencil. This is the Arches. Okay. And this was the Canson XL. Okay, so even here, so you can already tell the difference. So see how highly saturated the paint is on the Arches paper compared to the Canson paper, and that is because of the quality of the paper. Okay, now that being said, you can get a lot farther in terms of success in the realm that I'm talking to you about with better paper and student grade paint. Okay, so it kind of depends on what you're painting, what your goal is, what kind of standard you're measuring yourself against. Now this paper, the Canson XL watercolor paper, is really good for stamping and painting, so we'll probably use some of this as we go along. But you can see that the vibrancy, there's just like not even a comparison. And that's the difference in the paper. Okay, Arches versus Canson XL. So that's showing you at least two different kinds of paper with the student grade paint. So let me make another note here that this is I'm just going to do Winsor Student, okay? And this is, oh, that's wrong. I wrote it on the wrong way. Winsor Student. Let me find my eraser somewhere here. Goodness gracious, let me see if I can erase that without getting into that paint. We'll talk about erasing and lifting and things like that in future videos, because you do have to be careful erasing on a watercolor paper. It can mar the paper. So this is, oh, that was right. It is that we're talking about the paint, Cara-Renee. Winsor Student. Boo. Oh my goodness. Okay, there we go. So that's just a quick comparison for student grade paint on professional paper, 100% cotton, and student grade paper, Canson XL. Sorry, a lot of paints. Okay, so we're going to put this one away. I'm just going to set that over there. And so let me talk about some of the other brands that I like. So Daniel Smith is a great brand. It is artist grade, so it is spendy. But I'm telling you guys, if you can swing a decent watercolor paint in your primary colors, so a warm and cool of each primary color, so that would be red, yellow, blue, in cool and warm. In a professional grade, you can mix any color from those colors. Okay, so even though this is spendy, this is more expensive than M. Graham. Daniel Smith is more expensive than M. Graham, I believe. But again, I prefer M. Graham. I love the vibrancy of them. I feel like some of the Daniel Smith and Winsor Newton color, well, not Daniel Smith, the Winsor Newton colors are a little bit, they don't have the same punch to them, I feel like, as the M. Graham. And I don't know if that's the honey in it. So the other thing, let me just back up as it's coming to me here. We're going to be hopping around. So the reason why Winsor Newton Cotman can be sold at such a lower price is because of the binder that they use to make the watercolor paint, which is what gives you the different result where it sits on top of the paper, where it doesn't granulate, it doesn't do a lot of things, is because of the binder. So they can sell the student grade paints cheaper because of the binder that they use, versus a professional grade like M. Graham that uses honey. It's more expensive because of the products in it. So the pigment, the binders in it that make it hold all those pieces together are more expensive to make and produce. So that would be the case with all of these. These are all artist grades. So we've got Sennelier, that's another one of my favorites, you guys. And then Rembrandt is also, I'm having a trouble replacing my Rembrandt colors. I've got some colors I'm completely out of, but I'm having trouble. So these are all artist grade. So we've got Daniel Smith, M. Graham, Sennelier, and Rembrandt. And then these, I would say, some watercolorists would say that core watercolors are also would be lean towards the professional grade. I don't use these a lot because I have some palettes with them in it, primarily, I mean, strictly these kind of paints, but I prefer what I've become used to, I guess. So, and this is another one, is Mission Gold. These are a fantastic color. And so they're not as expensive as Daniel Smith or M. Graham, but I will try to link as many of these in the video description box as I can. And then this is the Winsor Newton Professional. So this is Winsor Green Blue shade. So again, Winsor Newton is not my favorite, even in the professional line. It's just not. So those are some of the colors that I have. That is not all of them. I'm telling you guys, I have so much paint. It is just ridiculous. So I do want to show you, what do I want to show you? Let's go ahead and let's use a piece of the arches. And I want to swatch out, what do I want to use? Let's go ahead and use this palette, because I do want to show you, we're going to use a piece of each of these. Okay, so this is the arches. This is Winsor Newton Professional. So I forgot we didn't talk about the paper. So we did talk about the Arches Cold Press. This is Winsor Newton Professional watercolor paper. It is 100%, it is 140 pound, and I believe that this is 100% cotton. If it doesn't say it's 100% cotton, it's not. So it's one of those things where a manufacturer will want to brag on the fact that it's 100% cotton. So you won't have to search for it. If it doesn't say it's 100% cotton, it's not. That doesn't mean you can't use paper that's not 100% cotton, okay? Bockingford is another one of my favorite. It is 140 pound cold press, and it is 100% cotton as well. And then we've got Blick non-professional, and this is not, it's 140 pound cold press. It's the same grade as all of these, but it is not 100% cotton. So we'll look at that as well. And then we've got the Hippie Crafter. We've done a little bit of work with Hippie Crafter, so we will revisit that here as well. And then we have Hannah Muley, which is another one of my favorite papers. It is 140 pound cold press. I believe it is 100% cotton as well. And then that's our swatching paper. And I believe we're going to swatch out on the Hippie Crafter, because that's what I told you that we were going to do. So I'm gonna just put a little bit of color down on each of these. So let's just do in order as I laid these out. And I'm gonna just, shall we just go with that same kind of Prussian blue color? It's really quite, or phthalo blue. So which one is phthalo blue? I've got this upside down. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, this is phthalo blue. So we're gonna use the phthalo blue. And so let's see, we've got Hannah Muley. I'm just going to move that sticky note, and I'm going to get my brush wet here. And I'm just going to quickly show you what I talk about, a little bit of a gradient when you're swatching out, and then we'll get to the swatching. So what I like to do is get my brush pretty wet, get into my color, and just get a really, really thick application of paint on your brush. And then we're just going to paint that down. You can do it in a square, you can do it any shape you want. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush off, and then and most of the paint is off, and I'm just going to touch that, and I'm going to bring out that color, and we're going to get lighter. Okay, I'm going to rinse it off again, and we're going to do that again. I'm not very good at this part, you guys, so like that. So see how we're getting lighter, lighter, lighter? And you're actually supposed to, I wasn't prepared for this, so you're actually supposed to completely get the water and the paint off of your brush before you go to the next thing, so we're not getting really a great blend. So see how it's getting lighter, lighter, lighter. I'm just going to show you like a 3-step gradient, so I'm going to show you dark to medium to really light in our swatching. So that is the Hand Moulet paper. So we're going to leave that there for reference sake. And then let's do the arches. I love arches paper, even though sometimes this gets annoying because see how it has the markings of arches on it. Sometimes I like to see that though. So there we go. So let's go ahead and get in here. So I think usually I start with swatching. I'm sorry, I have a foggy brain. So usually I start with getting my paper wet here when in that square that I'm going to put the paint. So then I'm going to go in really dark. Oh, look at that. See the difference in how that flowed? It's just, there's just like no comparison. Okay. So now we're going to go out of that. I'm going to rinse my brush off, and I'm going to just go like this and just spread it out. It doesn't have to be linear or anything. You can kind of just have it be here and there. So see how we're getting that. We can still see the white of the paper, and we can bring this out more. We're still getting that same color here. There we go. So that's what we're getting here. So you can see we're getting light to dark to medium to light. Okay. And then you can also go in just as a revisit of our original video. So we can come in here and we can drop a piece of a little bit of paint right there and watch what it does. You can have so much fun just swatching colors, you guys. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? So that is the arches, and I should have probably done that on this, but I can see the difference even between these two papers, quite honestly. I just feel like the arches, it just sits there in such a beautiful way. I mean, it sits on the top, but it also absorbs in this like perfect magical balance that I just love. So that is the arches. I need to move these because I don't want to drip paint in them, so I'm going to set those over there. Let's do the Winsor Newton Professional. And again, I believe that this is 100% cotton paper. So let me move that sticky note. I'm dipping into my dirty water. So again, I'm gonna, got a little bit of blue residue there because I've got it in my brush, just painting a little bit of a square, dropping in some of this paint, and we're gonna watch. See, this is exactly the same as the arches in performance. So look at that flow, okay? It's beautiful. And then we're gonna just touch this and let it kind of flow out. Okay, like that. Clean that brush again. And then drag this lighter color out, okay? So you can see kind of your gradient. This is beautiful paper too. I forgot about this. I actually pulled some of this out of my, I have a bin with file folders that keeps all my watercolor paper. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna drop in. So it has that same effect when you drop in paint. Oh, I love it. And so see again how it will only go where there's water. It's not gonna go outside of the borders unless we go like this, okay? So that is, oh, I love the Winsor Newton. I believe it is less expensive than the arches, but it's harder to get your hands on. So we have a local art store in downtown Portland, but downtown Portland scares me these days. I don't like to go down there. So this is Bockingford 140 pound. Again, I believe it is 140 pound. Oh, get that. Where did that Cancinell XL go? I don't know what I did with that. Okay, it's probably over there. So Balking for it is something you can buy on Amazon. It is up there with Arches paper in terms of cost, but it is a thicker paper, so it's very very hard to bend. So compared to this is not as stiff. Okay, it's not as stiff. That's the Arches. The Balking for it is a thicker paper, and so I like it for some things and I don't like it for other things. So let's go ahead and swatch this as well. But look at that flow. It's just so glorious. So glorious. I love this. Okay. And I'm going to dry my, or wipe my brush off, and I'm just going to touch that and let it bleed out. Look at how it travels. So fun. Okay, so you get that light, that dark to medium to light gradient. And we can do the same thing just because we're doing it on all of them. So let's just do it on this as well. So we're just going to drop in some paint. So you can see how all the professional grade does this. Now, in order to be fair though, I feel like I need to bring over the Hanny Muley again and do another little swatch because I didn't do that. I didn't let you see how it flowed. So let me do that really quick. Let's just do one more little bit down here. Okay, so again, dropping it in. Gotta turn it this way. I'm gonna get a little bit more paint in there. Okay, it's not flowing the same. So Hanny Muley has a different behavior than our other paints that we've already been working with. So I'm gonna get some water and I'm just gonna let it barely touch that so we can pull it out. Okay, just like we did before. And I'm just gonna grab that over like so, and then let's drop in and see what effect we get on the Hanny Muley paper. So see how it's not moving, it's not traveling as fast as the other paints did. So there's that. That's the Hanny Muley. I know that this is a lot of information on paints and papers, but I felt like in order to move along, I needed to give you an overview of the grades of paper and the grades of paint before we continue on, okay? Because I want you to have all the information if you're shopping around. My recommendation again would be good paper. You can get away with student grade paint on really good paper, okay? But if you have not as good of paper, but you have a better paint, you're going to do okay as well, in my opinion. Again, I am not a professional. I am just, what do they call that? Live action role playing. I'm live action role playing my intellect about watercolor. I mean, I have knowledge, but I don't have the experience that other people have. So this is Blick 140 pound non-professional watercolor. So let's get that out of the way. And we're going to do the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to get some water on here, and you're going to see the difference really fast. Okay? I'm not forecasting, I just know. So you see the flow, right? Which is, the flow is great, but it's going to sit on the top of that paper because my guess is that this paper has a lot of cellulose in it, which is paper. It has a lot of wood pulp in it rather than cotton. So that affects how it travels and how it behaves overall. So that's not too bad. But when you're doing a painting, it does make a difference. How this paint moves. It also, another thing I want to back up and talk about is that the grade of your, see how it's just not the same. There's just something different about it. But it's definitely passable. And this is pretty affordable paper. You have to get it on Blick Art or through Cheap Joe's or something like that online. I don't believe they sell it locally. But I feel like it does do a little bit of the whoosh, but it doesn't travel in the same way as the what was I going to say? I was going to say something about, so the other thing, when you're working with student grade paints or student grade paper, if you're painting a flower and let's say you have a petal that is too dark and you want to lift some of that color off, with a not professional grade paint, not professional grade watercolor paper, you'll have trouble lifting, or you'll lift too much. If you have a really cheap paper, you might lift all the way back to you might be pulling up the layers underneath. And we'll be talking about layering and glazing and those kinds of things in watercolor as we move through the series. But oftentimes when you try to pull off paint or lighten it, you actually can affect the layers underneath when you're not working with professional grade materials. Which again, for the junk journal world and what we're going to be talking about primarily in this series is how I'm going to do some general watercolor, but we're also going to talk about how we can use it in our junk journal ephemera. So I would say that this is completely passable for using with junk journal ephemera. So it just kind of depends on what you can afford and what you like, what speaks to you. Okay, because I just cannot tell you enough the difference between these two. This is the Arches, and this is the Winsor Newton. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see the difference, but we dropped the same amount of dark color in this square, but look at the difference. See how this is so much richer and darker? Okay. So there's a difference. Now that's also professional grade. This is professional grade watercolor too, if in case I missed mentioning that. Okay, our last one is our Hippie Crafter, which we've again talked about before. We're going to go ahead and do the same swatch just for consistency. So I'm just going to block out. It's a little tinted, not a problem for our purposes. We're going to just drop that in. So what you're seeing here is even though it's moving right on the paper, it's also sitting very much on top of the paper rather than soaking in like the watercolor, like the Arches or some of the other 100% cotton papers. So this is another great paper though, as I said in the review. So let's just move that out there. Yeah, like that. So I wish I could show you in real time. You'd be able to see that I can actually see water sitting on top of the paper. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I can see water. So that's the difference. On the other ones, I could not see water. So I'm going to drop in more here. So see how it's not moving? It's not moving in the same way. It's spreading out, but it's not leaving that concentrated bit like the other paper. So those are some of my tests in terms of watercolor paper and how it performs, and watercolor paint and how it performs. So that is that. We are done with that little experiment. I'm going to move my my paper towels here. I'm running out of room. So let's go ahead and close this palette up. And please feel free to ask me specific questions. This whole arena is so huge. There's just so many rabbit trails you can go down. Trying to explain it is just, it's hard. It's really hard because my mind is full of all of the knowledge that I have, and I'm not trying to pretend to be a watercolor teacher at all. I'm just sharing my knowledge. So that's a disclaimer there. So this is another paint that I would highly recommend. This is a new palette because I believe I gave away my palette from years ago. This was one of the first paints that I purchased because it was pretty affordable. It's not as affordable these days because of inflation. I believe that this was about $50, maybe not that much, but I'll link it below. But it's a Japanese watercolor. I believe it's Japanese. And these are what I call standard colors because I got another set that are the Art Nouveau colors. So I'll swatch those out on my own and maybe I'll show them to you later. But this is a great set. It's great. It's not professional grade, but I feel like it's a good pairing. If we're going to be using a more of a student grade paint or a mid-range paint, we're going to use a mid-range paper. Okay, so that's why I chose the Hippie Crafter. I don't think I'm going to do the lines on this. I think I'm just going to swatch them out. So this is the Hippie Crafter 140-pound cold press paper. So let's go ahead and just start swatching. I might speed bits of this up because we're getting a little bit long here. So I just want to make sure that where's my paper towel? Where do I put my paper towel? I want to make sure that my brush is very, very clean so that I don't get any bleeding in my colors. So this first color is just red, okay? And so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to put a little square. And I can already see that that water is just sitting on the top. I'm just gonna go right into the paint. Probably should have squirted that, but that's okay. So this is what you would do. You would drop a lot of paint in the first. We are just not getting a very good saturation there. Let me get more. I should have sprayed those. I'll do that here in a second. To get them ready, it's good to spray your palette. Okay, so there we go. So in the same fashion, and again, I'm rinsing my brush off in the dirty water and I'm dipping into the clean water next. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull this out. Oh, we got purple because I had blue on my brush. That's okay. Basically, what you're trying to see here is just what are the shades that you're getting here. You're getting that really dark saturated color, and you're getting the lighter color. So that's really actually quite pretty. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. I'll come back and talk with you a little bit as we go along. Again, swatching is really a good practice because it lets you see exactly what you have and what colors you're going to get out of your paint. Because sometimes in a professional grade paint, you'll look at your palette, like if I thought I would have showed you my Rembrandt palette, you can look at the palette and they almost look the same color. Like all the blues will look the same because they're professional grade. And so the swatching really, really helps to help you identify. So here we go again. So I haven't talked yet about brushes. I think in terms of importance, you can get away with a cheaper brush above getting away with cheaper paint or paper. I don't generally use real fur brushes. I have a couple because they came in watercolor sets, but they're not I wouldn't purchase one, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm not like a big like animal rights person per se, but I feel like if you can make the same kind of product with the same working properties, then why use real animal stuff? So that's my my position on it. And then I am, because I'm working on student grade paper, I am having to go back and add, oh, we've got is that wet? That's water. I'm going to dab that up because I don't want it to bleed into anything else we're doing here. So, but I'm having to add more water because it's just not moving the way that I'm used to paints moving when I swatch. So this is yellow. That's not, those are backwards. Oh, that's backwards. The labeling on this is backwards. This one says it's lemon yellow, but that's actually ochre. So I'll have to switch those pans. Not a big deal. They came wrong. This is lemon yellow. Okay. Let's get a little bit more of that lemon yellow. Just really saturate that. So again, going across the top, red, rose madder deep, and cadmium scarlet, which is an orange red. Oh boy, I'm making a mess here, Cara-Renee. The paper towel is already saturated. So on the yellows, you're going to see that we're not getting, you know, it's very, very faint over on this other side. Let's drop a little bit more color in there. There we go. So it doesn't flow the same on this paper or with this paint, but that is okay for the purposes that we are pursuing today. So the next color is olive green. I'm going to continue on for a bit without talking. I'm just going to turn the music on. Yeah, it's not moving on this paper like I'm used to it moving on the artist grade paper, but that's okay. For our purposes, this is going to be fine. So that was sap green. It's not a very rich sap green compared to what I'm used to, but again, it will do for what we're doing here. I'm putting extra water. This is Hooker's green. Hooker's green is not my favorite color, but it has its uses. It's a mix. So we'll talk about that in a future video, the difference between a pure pigment and a mix of colors. There's nothing wrong with a mixed color, like sap green is a mixed color, and it's one of my favorites, but there are some downfalls to it because you can get you get cleaner colors in your end product when you use pure pigments or one pigment colors or two pigment colors. So the next one is sap green deep. Oh, maybe this is the one I'm thinking of. That's more my color. Let's try that one out. I did change my technique here, and now I'm swatching out like a rectangle because this has taken a while. So there we go. It's still not very rich in comparison to my favorite, but it is okay, because I don't want you guys throwing away your money on paint that you're never going to use again or that you can't keep up with. But I'm telling you guys, the paints, even the artist grade, they last forever. Mine would have lasted longer if I hadn't created so many dang palettes, has so many palettes, because I love setting a palette. I just love it. So it's kind of an addiction. So the next one is Viridian. So on this paper, what I'm noticing is that the water is sitting on the paper for quite a while. So that's why we're not getting as rich of colors. I'd be interested, I might swatch this palette out on Arches and show you in the photos at the end what the difference looks like, because I believe that there is a difference. So I will do that off camera, though I'm not going to keep you on for that. So this is mallet sheet. I don't know, never heard of the color. It's like it almost looks like a patina color. I'm not a big patina person in terms of that green shade, but we'll use it. It has its purposes, I'm sure. It's very opaque, so that's probably why. And that's the other thing. A lot of mixed colors are more opaque because they're not as pure. Which again, depending on what you're using them for, it's not a super big deal. So there we go. We're not getting much of a bleed out there at all. It's interesting. thing I'm noticing is I'm having to work really hard to get the dark gradient here. I'm having a hard time. I don't know if it's the paints or if it's the paper, which is why I will swatch this out on Arches paper as well, just so you guys can see what the difference is. So just in case you're curious, I'll do that off camera as I mentioned. Okay, so we're on to turquoise blue. This is cobalt violet. Oh, that's really vibrant. So also, that being said, there are some colors that are just automatically, because of their root pigment components or properties, they will tend to be more vibrant no matter what color or no matter what brand or grade of paint you're using. Purple is one of those. Dioxazine purple. This is cobalt violet is what they're calling it. But you can see it went on just out of the gate darker without a lot of work. This ultramarine is one of my favorite blues, but it's not very saturated in this palette, but that's all right. So I'm not going to swatch out the white because it's white on white, and I don't generally use white in watercolor, but I'm going to be playing around with some different stuff with you guys, and so I might dip into the white. This burnt sienna is pretty vibrant, pretty pigmented. Comparatively, like to some of them. Okay. And then the last one, well, we got two more. We've got raw umber deep, and then we've got black. I will swatch out the black just because I'm curious. I don't use black generally in watercolor because you can make a pretty dark color with mixing other colors. Oh, that's a pretty good raw umber. Yeah, not bad. Not bad at all. Yeah, I'm liking that. But I'm a raw umber girl, so I use raw umber all over my life. So just adding some water to pull that out, just to get a lighter color. It's not pulling as much as it would be if I was using Arches paper or 100% cotton. And I'm not going to get deep into the science of pigments and stuff, but I will give you kind of a little bit more knowledge of that in a future video. So there we go. Here is black. Ooh, wow. Ooh, wow. That's pretty cool. For black, it's cool. Okay, here we go. I'm going to hold it up for you to see. Nice. Okay, so those are the Cara-Renee paints, and I will link those specifically. I'll probably list the brands of paint that I mentioned, but I'm not going to list them all. You can look them up. But I will link the Cara-Renee paints. So this is our swatch for all the colors. And again, this is red, this is rose madder deep. Sorry, I'm over you. This is cadmium scarlet, which is basically in another brand, it would be called cadmium orange. Whoops. It means we just hit an hour, so the monitor goes off. Cadmium yellow, lemon yellow, yellow ochre, goodness gracious, olive green, sap green light, sap green, hooker's green, sap green deep, Viridian. Viridian is a great mixing green, so we'll be talking about that in the mixing. It's a great green for mixing is what I was trying to say. This is turquoise green deep. This is whatever that is, malachite, ultramarine pale, ultramarine blue, turquoise blue, indigo, cobalt violet, burnt sienna, raw umber, and black. So there you go. So I will make a note on this that this is using the Hippie Crafter paper. Off camera, I will do a swatch of the same colors on Arches paper so you can see the difference. So I think that's it for today, you guys. I hope that it wasn't too rabbit traily. I've got a foggy head, and there's just so much to say about watercolor, so much to say. Basically, what I'm trying to impart to you is kind of expand the world to the big kind of watercolor world of grades and brands and how each of those performs, and then we're going to back it down to something that's more reasonable, something that's affordable, something that most people could probably get their hands on comparative to the more expensive products. Now, that being said, if I was to have a closing statement, it would be the paper matters the most. Okay, and I think you're going to see that when I swatch this palette out on the Arches paper. So go ahead and check out the photos at the end and you'll be able to see that. I'll be sure to label it Arches versus the Hippie Crafter. So until next time, guys, take care. Bye-bye.